So is the Bible true? Well, yes. Thanks for watching. Okay, I'm kind of kidding. Obviously, the Bible is very important to us as Christians. It tells our story. This is where we learn about Jesus, where we learn about God and God in action in our world. It's where we learn about our Creator and creation and how we came about and really how we're supposed to be in this world as Christians. The Bible is really important to us, right? So we want to think it's true. We want it to be true because it's what we have our faith in. It's where we start our beliefs. It's in the Bible. But the Bible is interesting because the Bible is not a book in of itself. The Bible is actually multiple books. It's much more like a library. So I really want you to start thinking about the Bible as a library because it's every single thing in the Bible is a different book. So Genesis is a book. Exodus is a book. John is a book. Matthew is a book. Those are each their own individual books. There's even letters from Paul. All the epistles, they're all different writings from different people that were written at different times. And somebody way back when combined all of these things into one to create the Bible, what we know of as the Bible. But even then, the Old Testament and the New Testament are completely different collections of those books because the Old Testament is the Hebrew Scriptures. That's the stuff that the Jewish people followed, that is their holy Scriptures, the Old Testament. And so when Jesus came along, after Jesus died and was risen up, people started writing about this miraculous person, this Jesus guy. And so that's how all of a sudden the New Testament started being written. People wrote those stories down, and then the letters of Paul writing to the early churches in Corinth or in Ephesus, and all the different letters, all those being written down. And eventually somebody took all those and put them together, and that created the New Testament. But they realized that the Old Testament was important too, because without the Old Testament, we don't have the New Testament, right? God created everything. The Exodus out of Egypt is important to the story of Jesus because Jesus was Jewish, so this all matters. Jesus did what he did and the way things happened because of the Jewish ancestry that was there, because of what happened in the early Hebrew Scriptures. And this is actually what Jesus was teaching people. Jesus is following these Scriptures. Jesus is quoting these Scriptures throughout his ministry. So it's all important. So it all comes together to build into our Bible. So that's the first thing you need to know about the Bible, is it's not just a book, it's many books, and it was written across a vast time period. It's written across thousands of years with many writers. So we come back to the question, is it true? Well, it's really hard to say because, you see, with so many different writers and over such a large period of time, and even time spanning across time where there wasn't a written word. So in fact, a lot of the stories in the Bible are stories that were told early on before there was any writing. And people would tell the story from one person to another, from one tribe to another, and it get passed along. And so obviously things got changed. It's like playing the game telephone, where you tell one person at one end something, and by the time you get 10 people down, it's a completely different thing, right? You still might have the same thought behind it, but it's not exactly how it started off. So that's kind of the same thing, is eventually somebody took those stories and they wrote them down, but they're probably different from the original storytelling when they very first happened, if they're actually things that happened. So even in the Gospels, we see that, because these Gospels were written 60, 70, 100 years after Jesus. So these Gospel writers, some of them might not have even been alive when Jesus was walking, but they heard the stories and they wrote them down so that people can remember them. So I don't know, is the Bible true? Well, they're probably not, the stories are probably not 100% accurate from exactly the way they happened. But does that matter? Is the inherent faith piece of the Bible still there? Is what really is at the core of the message of the Bible still there? Or do we lose something through these stories? And really, what is true versus what is factual? See, my truth can be very different than what your truth is. Because here's an example, I believe that the greatest food ever is pasta. That's the greatest food. That's a truth to me. That is absolutely true. You can't argue anything different to me. I think the best food is a pasta. Nice, good spaghetti dish. Fantastic. With a little cheese on top. That is true. But you might be thinking something different. You might think the best food ever is a nice steak, or maybe pizza, or a big old hamburger. That's your truth. So our truths are a little bit different. But what is factual is a whole different thing. It is a fact that I'm on this camera right now, shooting this with you. It is a fact that right now, as I speak, it's daylight out. It is a fact that I am actually not standing in the space that it looks like I'm standing in, but this is in fact a green screen. That's a fact. So we have these two differences between facts and truth. There are facts in the Bible, and we can prove those. We can go through historically and through archaeology and prove certain things in the Bible are facts. They actually happened. And there are things in the Bible that we believe are true. And we might not be able to numerically or physically prove those things, but if we believe them, what's it matter? In fact, that's what our faith all comes down to, is do we believe that these things happened? Whether we can prove it or not, that's what faith is all about. So as you talk about whether the Bible's true or not, you have to talk about your faith. You have to talk about what you believe. And yes, there are some stories in the Bible that aren't true. There you go, I said it. There's stories in the Bible that just didn't happen, but they're actual stories that people were telling to prove, to show points and show how God is at work in the world. They weren't meant to be actual stories of actual people. They're meant to be stories that we can relate to, so we can understand how God works in our lives and how God works in this world. But that doesn't eliminate the truth behind the message of God, the goodness of God's heart, the fact that God loves us no matter what, and the grace that God gives to us through Jesus Christ.